Hello, and welcome to the Stem Cell Healing Institute podcast. In case you have any questions regarding this program, please write us at info@stemcellhealinginstitute.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome to the Stem Cell Healing Institute podcast. This is a weekly podcast and we are here with Dr. Zahra Figueredo. Doctor, how are you?
I'm very well, Louise. Thank you so much. Good that it's a Friday.
So we are going to talk about the optic nerve injuries and how the stem cells can help to improve our vision. Is that correct, doctor?
That's right. Yep. Optic nerve injuries, optic neuritis, anything that has to do with damage or disease to the optic that affects the optic nerve. Right.
We did talk about macular degeneration in a few podcasts ago. So if you guys want to go and listen to that podcast, it may help you to clarify some doubts. But in this case,
That's
it's
right.
more about the optic nerve injury. Doctor,
Right.
how do you actually apply these stem cells directly into the eye, or how is the procedure done?
That's a very good question, Louise, because it's an important one, because we want to point out to the patients that when we treat the eye at the Stem Cell Healing Institute, we don't want to apply the stem cells directly inside the bulb of the eye, because there is a great chance of injury and even causing blindness. So what we do is we take a different approach. We do a retrobulbar injection, which is an injection that takes place behind the eye from the lower eyelid down and around the eye, right next to the optic nerve. So if we're dealing with optic nerve injuries, even if we're dealing with a retinal injury, a retinitis pigmentosa, macular degeneration that we've both talked about past podcasts, but in this case, optic neuritis, we actually place the stem cells right next to the nerve and right next to the eye, so that any inflammatory cytokines, which in this case we want these inflammatory cytokines because they're chemical messengers that are secreted from damaged tissue, whether it's the nerve in this case, or the retina, or the macula, or any part of the eye, or any part of the body for that matter. We use these chemical messengers for the stem cells to detect what cell and where the damage is, and each chemical messenger or cytokine is specific for a type of cell, or a type of cell from an organ, or whatever tissue of the body. So it's very specific. So the stem cells know exactly where to go and where the damage is and where they need to regenerate and reconstruct and rejuvenate. So our bodies are pretty incredible.
May I ask you what type of stem cells do you use in this case?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so we will use either a combination of, they're all mesenchymal stem cells, but either a combination of autologous bone marrow derived mesenchymal stem cells, which we have a proprietary method of growing in vivo. We will also combine that with endometrial and or umbilical cord cells for the best possible treatment. And what we want to do with that is not only apply them locally, which is super important in this case, but we will also apply them intravenously. So yes, the type of stem cells we use we will combine autologous bone marrow derived stem cells, which we have a proprietary method of growing or expanding, but we will also deploy the stem cells intravenously to have the stem cells flow and go to everywhere the blood flows. So we have that sort of total body effect, but also going to the eye, going to the blood vessels of the eye, so that we can have, leaving no stones unturned.
So in this case, what would be like the recovery time frame after the patient receives the stem cells?
Yes, so there really is no downtime. There's no downtime at all. We have patients that come for treatment to Guatemala and they're visiting Antigua the next day. So really no downtime whatsoever. But in terms of how long can it be before they see results, that can be weeks to months. Okay, as I've mentioned in past podcasts, general rule of 3 months for to see a good effect. But even then, it's not over. It keeps the stem cells keep regenerating. But we've had patients that have had literally results, changes in how they see, the distance they see, light and dark contrast. We have had patients report improvements within days in many cases. But we always have a good general rule of thumb of up to 3 months for them to see a good amount of change.
What would be some examples of eye injury?
Yes. So when we talk about eye injury, it can be in several different forms. So there can be physical damage to the eye in terms of an injury or like a sports injury or a car accident or any physical injury that directly impacts the eye. Then we have also disease conditions that cause injury to the eye, such as diabetes, the glycosylated proteins in diabetes. When we have uncontrolled high blood sugar, that can cause damage to the nerves, all of the nerves of the body, in fact. And that's why we get neuropathies and then optic neuritis and damage to all kinds of nerves. And then it affects the eyes as well, which is so common in diabetes. And then stroke conditions can affect the eyes and the nerves of the eye, as well as cardiovascular disease can affect the eyes, where there's a deficiency in blood flow and oxygen and nutrients to the eyes, which can also affect the vision as well. So there are different reasons, and then of course there are many different other disease conditions that can affect the eye, but these are the ones like multiple sclerosis is another one that affects the myelin sheath. We talked about that just the other day. And the nerves have all of them have myelin sheaths. So when I talk about the optic nerve, that would definitely fall under that umbrella. And so yes, there are various different reasons or causes of optic nerve, and I think those are just a few to consider.
So, doctor, why aren't these type of treatments done in Canada or US?
Yes, Louise, good question. I'm glad you brought that up. And we've talked about this in the past, but I think it's definitely worth reiterating. With all of the FDA and Health Canada restrictions in Canada, in North America, we have the bulk of our patients that come from North America because these treatments just aren't available there legally. Um, we cannot use stem cells from anything or any source other than the patient's own body. Okay, number one, in the US. Canada has completely outlawed stem cells, by the way. A couple of years ago, they allowed a version of stem cells only from the bone marrow, but now they've even outlawed that. So unfortunately, Canada's going backwards, and I think the US is also in some degree, but to some degree, but. In the US, there is a version of stem cells available. And again, it has to come only from the patient's own body. So we can't use endometrial or umbilical cord cells, anything other than autologous, which come from the patient's own body. Number one. Number two, the stem cells cannot be combined with anything, with growth factors from the patient's own blood, exosomes, any other, cocktail that we here at the Stem Cell Healing Institute, we produce really very potent cocktails of stem cells that cannot be done in the U.S. Neither can just IVs of stem cells can be done unless it's a specific type of a doctor doing it. So IVs of stem cells are outlawed as well. Also, the stem cells cannot be grown or manipulated in any way. So whatever numbers they get in one session, it has to be done in one session, one day. That is, they're limited to only that. So I, as a physician, have practiced in the US for many years. And I know the limitations and how difficult it is to get the best results with all the limitations in the US. And so it's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. But yes, it pretty much works too well. And so I don't think the pharmaceutical companies like it.
Yeah, for sure. It's some of this stuff is very political as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I think that's a good topic for another podcast,
yeah, for
Luis.
sure. I mean, I hate to talk about politics, but in this case, maybe we should. Doctor, so people will have to come to Guatemala to get this procedure, and what can they expect in Guatemala? Because I know, being a Guatemalan, and I know that people from up north are a little afraid to come to Guatemala. But you, being a Canadian living in Guatemala, can you tell them what to expect in Guatemala City, in Guatemala as a country?
Yes, you bet. Everybody hears, oh, Guatemala, it's a third world country. Actually, that's not even the politically correct term anymore. It's developing country. But you know what I mean. And the security measures and the warnings and things like that. Well, I have been living here since 2012 and practicing here. And it's a very, very safe, very progressive country. A lot of people come down and think, wow, I can't believe Guatemala is as developed as it is, because they had a completely different preconceived notion and idea of Guatemala. But it's a very progressive country. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. We have active volcanoes and coffee farms. Good percentage of Starbucks coffee comes from Guatemala and Antigua. So it's a very, very advanced. And then we have the Mayan ruins and Tikal. And for those of you who are Star Wars fans, if you ever watched The Return of the Jedi, part of that was filmed in Tikal, right here in Guatemala, and at the ruins. So it's quite a phenomenal country. So much beauty, and with the capacity to do such great and practice such great medicine without any limitations, to keep it safe and so effective for our patients. It's just so rewarding.
It's a great satisfaction to hear foreigners talk about Guatemala because, well, people have a misconception of my country. But, doctor, I would like to also mention that if you're gonna stay in the city, there are many stuff you can do. We have different malls around the city. We do have a very interesting zoo. It's a huge zoo that you can bring
Oh,
your
yes,
kids to see the different animals that. And
that's right.
there are many things to do in Guatemala City. If you want to go play bowling, you can go play bowling. If you want to go to Chuck E. Cheese, there's a Chuck E. Cheese. So there's many things to do in Guatemala. So you'll be
That's
more than
right.
welcome to come to my country. Doctor, I
That's
appreciate
right.
your time. And I don't know if you want to add something else to this podcast.
Yeah, yes, Louise. So I do want to again remind our listeners that we have a brand new website. We're actually still posting videos and articles, but please don't hesitate to check out our new website, our YouTube channel, where we posted some new videos, very informative videos. And then, of course, we have our Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, just really excited about the changes. So, any feedback, comments, questions, any suggestions, we are very, very open and eager to hear from you.
And if you want to contact Dr. Figueredo, you can do it directly by sending an email to info@stemcellhealinginstitute.com. Thank you, Doctor, for your time, and I will see you next week.
Thank you so much, Louise. You have a beautiful weekend.
You too. You take care.
Thank you too. Bye bye.
If you want to contact us at the Stem Cell Healing Institute or Dr. Zahra Figueredo, you may do it by calling us. In North America, you may dial +1-209-690-7836. Also, if you want to write us by WhatsApp, you may add +502-4220-7297. Please send us an email at info@stemcellhealinginstitute.com. And don't forget to visit our website, stemcellhealinginstitute.com. Also, if you like to recommend our treatments, you may find us on Facebook at Stem Cell Healing Institute. Please follow us on Instagram at StemCellHI. If you want to recommend this podcast, please refer to anchor.fm/stemcellhealing. Also, you may find us with that very same name on Spotify. If you want to watch our videos, please go to Dr. Zahra Figueredo. That is on YouTube. Thank you.